The memo from my property management company sat on my desk, demanding attention. Rent overdue Unit 1205 Huntington Towers. Third notice. I traced my fingers over the tenants' names. James and Marie Anderson. My parents. 5 years ago, they'd stood in our cramped living room, telling me I was making the biggest mistake of my life. Real estate. Dad had scoffed. In this economy, you'll be crawling back here within a month. Mom's voice had been equally dismissive. At least your brother Michael had the sense to go into banking. But you'll never be anything, Natalie. Never. I picked up my phone, scrolling through the recent messages from them. Each one more desperate than the last. Natalie, there must be some mistake with the rent increase. This is ridiculous. $3,000 for a 2-bedroom. Call us back immediately. The power company says they're cutting service. They had no idea that Huntington Towers, the luxury apartment building they'd moved into 6 months ago, bragging about their exclusive new address, was owned by Anderson Real Estate Holdings. My company, named after the family that never believed in me. Miss Anderson? My assistant Julia appeared in the doorway. Your brother's here. Again. I straightened my designer blazer, a far cry from the second-hand clothes I'd worn when I left home. Send him in. Michael stormed into my office, his banking suit wrinkled, his usual arrogance replaced by barely contained panic. This has gone far enough. Nat, Mom and Dad can't afford the new rent. You have to do something. Do I? I kept my voice calm, professional. The market rate for that unit is actually $3,500. They're getting a discount at $3,000. Market rate. He ran his hands through his thinning hair. It was $2,200 when they moved in. Yes, and now it's $3,000. That's how real estate works, Michael. Something about supply and demand. They taught you that in banking school, right? He slammed his hands on my desk. They're our parents. Really? Because 5 years ago when I asked them for a loan to start my business, they weren't acting very parental. What did Dad say? Oh right, only idiots invest in real estate. I pulled up the building's financials on my laptop. Instead, they gave you $50,000 for your sure thing, cryptocurrency investment. How did that work out? Michael's face reddened. We both knew that money had vanished when his crypto portfolio crashed. Just like the guaranteed returns he'd promised Mom and Dad had vanished. That's different, he muttered. I was trying to help them. And I'm running a business, I replied. One that happens to own the building they live in. The building they chose because it was prestigious enough for their social circle. They don't even know you own it. No, they don't. I smiled slightly. Just like they didn't know I owned their last building. Or the one before that. Michael's eyes widened. What are you talking about? I turned my laptop around, showing him the Anderson Real Estate Holdings portfolio. 3 luxury buildings in the city's most desirable neighborhoods. All purchased over the last 5 years, while my family thought I was playing at business. Remember the Morton Street apartments? Where they lived before Huntington Towers. I bought that building 2 years ago. They moved out because of the unreasonable rent increase. Before that, it was the Wellington. Same story. You've been forcing them to move? I've been running my properties according to market rates, I corrected him. The fact that they keep choosing my buildings is their decision. Though their options are getting limited, I own quite a bit of luxury rental property in this city now. Michael sank into one of my office chairs, the expensive leather creaking under his weight. Why didn't you tell them? Tell them what? That the daughter they dismissed as a failure now owns half the high-end rental properties in the city? That their nothing of a child has a real estate portfolio worth more than Dad earned in his entire career. I stood up, walking to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. My city increasingly. They made their opinions of me very clear. Now they're experiencing the consequences. But the power, they can't have their electricity cut off. Dad's medication needs refrigeration. They should have thought about that before spending their rent money on that luxury cruise last month. I turned back to face him. Yes, I know about that too. My property managers are very thorough with their reports. Michael's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his face paling further. Mom says they just got an eviction notice. Really? I checked my watch. Right on schedule. Legal's very efficient. Natalie, please. He stood up, desperation clear in his voice. I know they treated you badly. I know I did too. But they're still our parents. I picked up the property report again, pretending to consider it. You know what I remember most about the day I left? It wasn't Dad's anger or Mom's disappointment. It was you standing there smirking, telling me I'd never make it in the real world. He had the grace to look ashamed. I was wrong. Yes, you were. I sat back down at my desk. And now you all get to see exactly how wrong. What do you want? He asked quietly. Money? An apology. I smiled, remembering all the family dinners where they'd praised his financial genius, while ignoring my growing success. I want you to go home and tell them exactly who their landlord is. Tell them who's been behind every rent increase, every building sale, every relocation they've had to make in the last 5 years. They'll be devastated. They'll be educated, I corrected him. About karma. About consequences. And about underestimating their daughter. As Michael turned to leave, shoulders slumped in defeat, I called after him. Oh, and Michael? The power gets cut off at 5 p.m. Better hurry home to help them pack. At exactly 4:55 p.m. I stood in the lobby of Huntington Towers, watching the security feeds on my tablet. Right on schedule, a maintenance team was heading up to Unit 1205. In 5 minutes my parents would learn exactly what it meant to have no power, both literally and figuratively. Miss Anderson? Julia appeared at my side. Your parents are demanding to speak with the building owner. They're quite insistent. I bet they are. I smoothed my designer dress, a small indulgence that cost more than the entire wardrobe they'd mocked when I left home. Tell them the owner will meet them in the penthouse office in 10 minutes. As I rode the private elevator to the top floor, I thought about all the times they'd dismissed my ambitions. Real estate is a man's world, Dad had said. You'll never survive. Mom had been equally cutting. At least get a real job first, something respectable like your brother. The penthouse office was my favorite space in the building. All glass and steel with panoramic views of the city skyline. I'd signed the papers to buy this building right here, sitting at this desk, while my family still thought I was struggling to make ends meet. At exactly 5:15 Julia escorted my parents in. They stopped short when they saw me, their expressions morphing from anger to confusion. Natalie. Mom's perfectly maintained facade cracked slightly. What are you doing here? Hello, Mom, Dad. I gestured to the leather chairs across from my desk. Please sit down. We're here to see the building owner, Dad blustered, his face reddening. Not to watch you play secretary. Oh, but you are seeing the owner. I smiled, enjoying the way their expressions froze. Anderson Real Estate Holdings. Did you never wonder about the name? Mom sank into one of the chairs, her designer purse, a knockoff I noticed, clutched tightly in her lap. This is your building? This one. The Morton Street Apartments. The Wellington. I ticked them off on my fingers. Every unreasonable rent increase, every impossible lease term, that was all me. Impossible, Dad whispered. You couldn't afford, you're not capable. Actually, I am. I pulled up my company's portfolio on the large screen behind me. 15 properties. Over $100 million in assets. All built while you were telling everyone how I'd never amount to anything. Mom's hand flew to her throat. But Michael said. Michael knew the truth about an hour ago. I checked my watch. Speaking of time, how's the power situation in your unit? As if on cue, Dad's phone buzzed. He looked at it, face paling. They've cut it off. Your father's medication. Needs refrigeration, yes. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a stack of papers. I have a solution for that. 2 options, actually. They leaned forward eagerly, probably expecting some last-minute reprieve. Some sign that their daughter still craved their approval. Option 1. You sign these papers acknowledging your breach of lease terms, and vacate the property within 24 hours. I'll even give you back your security deposit, which is more generosity than you showed me when I asked for help starting this company. And option 2? Mom asked quietly. You stay. Pay market rate, $3,500 a month, not the discounted $3,000 you've been complaining about. Plus a new security deposit. And... I paused, letting the moment stretch. You admit to everyone in your social circle exactly who owns this building. Every time you brag about your address, every time you host one of your dinner parties, you tell them about the daughter you said would never make it. Dad stood up so quickly his chair toppled backward. This is blackmail. No, this is business. I stood as well, my Louboutins putting me at eye level with him. Something you said I'd never understand, remember? When you gave Michael his startup money instead of me. That was different, he sputtered. He had a real plan. He had a gambling scheme dressed up in crypto jargon. I cut him off. I had market research, financial projections, and a solid business model. But you never even looked at my proposal, did you? Mom started to cry, her expensive mascara running. We were trying to protect you. Real estate is so risky. Funny how risk looks different when you're the one facing eviction. I pushed the papers across my desk. You have 1 hour to decide. Option 1 or option 2. After that, the security deposit offer is off the table. You'd do this to your own parents? Dad's voice shook with either rage or fear. Maybe both. You did this to yourselves. I turned to look out over the city. My city increasingly. Every time you dismissed me, every time you praised Michael while ignoring my success, every time you moved into one of my buildings because it was prestigious, without ever wondering how I could afford to live here too. The penthouse, Mom whispered, realization dawning. When you invited us to dinner last Christmas and we declined because we were too busy. Was mine, yes. I turned back to them. Just like this entire building. Just like every building you've lived in for the past 5 years. Your rent checks have been paying for my expansion into the luxury market. Ironic, isn't it? Dad slumped in his chair, suddenly looking every bit his age. Why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me? Or would you have found some way to dismiss it like you dismissed everything else I've ever achieved? My phone buzzed. A message from building security. Your belongings are being packed as we speak. Professional movers, of course. I'm not completely heartless. Natalie, please. Mom reached across the desk. We can work this out. As a family. Family. I laughed softly. Family supports each other. Family believes in each other. Family doesn't spend years mocking someone's dreams only to end up living in the reality they created. I stood up, gathering my things. 1 hour. Option 1 or option 2. Julia will wait for your decision. Where are you going? Dad called as I reached the door. Home. To my penthouse. The one you were too busy to visit. I paused in the doorway. Oh, and don't bother calling Michael for help. His bank just approved a loan for his new house, through my investment company. He's learning some interesting lessons about karma too. Later that night I sat in my penthouse watching the city lights twinkle below. Julia had texted their decision. Option 2. Pride, it seemed, was less important than keeping their prestigious address. My phone buzzed with a message from Mom. We were wrong about you. So wrong. I typed back. Yes, you were. Rent's due on the 1st. Don't be late this time. Then I blocked their numbers and poured myself a glass of champagne. Sometimes success isn't just about proving people wrong. It's about making them live with the proof every single day. Looking out over my growing real estate empire, I smiled. They'd said I'd never be anything. Now they were living in my building, paying my rent, and telling all their friends about their daughter, the real estate mogul. Karma, it turns out, has excellent taste in real estate.